This is not just a story of broken walls or blood-stained streets. This is not merely about war or conflict, nor just another chapter in the long history of human suffering. This is about sacred ground. This is about a land unlike any other. A land where the earth has carried the footsteps of prophets, where the sky has echoed with divine revelation, and where every grain of sand holds the scent of something eternal. Palestine is not ordinary. It never was. It is a land stitched with the threads of heaven, embroidered by the presence of Ibrahim, Dawood, Suleiman, Isa, and Muhammad. Peace be upon them all. This land has witnessed not just history but destiny. And today, as blood soaks its soil, as the cries of children rise above the smoke, that destiny is still unfolding. It's tempting to see Palestine through the lens of the news cycle. Just another conflict zone marked by political lines and shifting alliances. But to do so is to miss its truth. To reduce Palestine to a geopolitical issue is to ignore the pulse that beats beneath its soil. This is not just contested territory. It is the chosen land. It is the place Allah Himself described as the land which we have blessed for the worlds. Not just for one people, not just for one moment, but for all time and all of creation. It is a living testimony of divine proximity. Every mountain here, every valley, every olive tree is a witness to something sacred, something eternal. When Ibrahim carried the weight of monotheism on his shoulders, he walked this land. When Dawood ruled with justice, it was beneath the shade of these ancient trees. When Suleiman commanded the wind and spoke to the birds, it was from this soil his voice rose. When Isa wept for his people and called them to love and truth, it was this earth that drank his tears. And when the final messenger, Muhammad, was called by his Lord on the miraculous night of Isra and Miraj, it was to Al-Aqsa that he traveled, and it was from here that he ascended beyond the heavens. This land is not metaphorically holy. It is literally the meeting place between earth and heaven, the bridge between this world and the next. And yet, today, this sacred land groans under the weight of injustice. Its sanctity has not diminished, but its pain has deepened. It is here that children grow up, not with laughter and toys, but with the sound of tanks at their doorstep. It is here that mothers bury their sons and whisper, Alhamdulillah, through trembling lips. It is here that prayers rise from the rubble, echoing between the shattered stones of once glorious masjids. The earth, once kissed by the sandals of prophets, is now bruised by bombs and boots. But do not mistake this suffering for defeat. Do not confuse the silence of the world with the silence of the divine. For Allah sees, Allah knows, and Allah never forgets. This is not just a crisis of war. It is a test of remembrance. It is a call to the soul, a whisper to the heart, asking, do you see what is unfolding? Do you feel the tremors of prophecy moving through time? Because what is happening now is not just tragedy, it is prophecy unfolding in real time. The pain of Palestine is not the end of its story. It is a chapter written in fire, but one that leads to light. And those who walk upon this land today, who endure its trials and carry its burdens, are not forgotten. They are chosen. They are not broken. They are bearing the trust once carried by the prophets themselves. In the stillness of Al-Aqsa, in the cracked streets of Gaza, in the hearts of the faithful, the story continues. And as we witness it from afar, we are not just watching a newsreel. We are watching sacred history unfold. We are witnessing the movement of divine will, the fulfillment of promises made long ago. And the question that remains is not just what will happen in Palestine. The real question is, where do we stand as it happens? Because the prophecies are not coming. They are already here. They are unfolding now. Palestine is not merely a land. It's a living scripture etched into the surface of the earth. It is where divine history was not just spoken, but walked. Where revelation was not merely heard, but lived. Every breath of wind that sweeps through its olive groves carries remnants of prophetic prayers. Every rock, every stone has been witness to a divine encounter. This soil is not passive. It is sacred memory. It remembers the footsteps of prophets, the tears of messengers, and the echoes of verses sent down from the heavens. There are places on this earth that are touched by the sacred, but this land has been drenched in it. The story of divine oneness begins here. Ibrahim walked these valleys with the fire of monotheism in his chest, speaking truth to a world lost in idolatry. His journey was not symbolic, it was physical. His feet pressed into this soil. He built altars here. He prayed here. He challenged kings here. Dawood ruled from this very land, administering justice not as a politician but as a prophet king chosen by the Almighty. His psalms were sung under the shade of ancient trees that still stand, testifying silently to a time when revelation echoed like thunder across the hills. And then came Sulaiman, son of Dawood, whose command over the forces of nature was unparalleled. The wind carried him from place to place, and even that wind knew its master when he stood upon this earth. He built the first temple, not as a monument to man, but as a place of worship devoted solely to the Lord of all worlds. His court was filled not only with humans, but with jinn and animals and birds, all understanding their roles under divine order, all witnessing the majesty of Tawheed from the soil of Palestine. The presence of Isa in this land is not a distant tale. It is a chapter of heartbreak and healing that still breathes. Here, he healed the blind and the leper by the permission of Allah. Here, he fed the poor, comforted the broken, and cried over the fate of his people. His voice once filled the streets, now choked with smoke. His tears once watered the soil, now cracked from drought and despair. He walked among the oppressed, loved the unloved, and showed mercy even to those who cursed him. His mother, Maryam, gave birth to him miraculously near the sacred tree, and her dignity still lingers in the air. Their story was not isolated in myth. It happened here, on the very ground now stained with blood and strewn with rubble. And then came the seal of the prophets, the final messenger, Muhammad, peace be upon him. From Makkah, he was summoned, not by a man, but by the Lord of the worlds. The journey of Isra began with his miraculous arrival at Al-Aqsa, not as a guest, but as an honored traveler who would lead the other prophets in prayer. In that moment, time bent, space opened, and all of divine history converged in one place. He stood there not just as the final prophet, but as the bridge between all that came before and all that would follow. From Al-Aqsa, he ascended in Miraj, traveling through the layers of heaven, meeting prophets, witnessing the unseen, and receiving the command of prayer. That ascent was not imagined. It was a miracle that began in this land, under the night sky of Palestine. The Qur'an calls this land the one we have blessed for the worlds. This blessing is not abstract. It flows through the centuries. It pulses through the past, the present, and the future. It is a place where the line between heaven and earth is thinner, where prayers are lifted quicker, where the hearts of believers tremble more deeply. This land is not just geographic space. It is a divine trust. It was chosen, favored, and honored. And so too were its people. To honor Palestine is to honor every prophet who ever called to truth. To defend it is to preserve the sanctity of revelation itself. To remain silent in its suffering is to forget the echo of Allah's words and the weight of his promises. The winds that now carry smoke once carried the calls of Dawood's psalms. The streets now filled with tears once received the sandals of Isa and Muhammad, peace be upon them. This contrast is not coincidence. It is the tension between divine blessing and human betrayal, between what God gave and what man has stolen. And yet the sanctity has not disappeared. It cannot. The land remains blessed because the one who blessed it never revoked that honor. The injustice inflicted upon it only highlights the spiritual weight it carries. No oppressor, no army, no policy can erase the fact that this is a land of miracles. When a child in Gaza recites the Qur'an in the ruins of his home, he is participating in a divine tradition. When a mother in Jerusalem whispers a prayer into the night, her words float upward from the very heart of sacred geography. When an old man walks to Al-Aqsa with aching bones and trembling hands, He is retracing the steps of prophets. These are not symbols, they are facts. This is divine history, written into the very bones of the land. Palestine is not waiting for a miracle. It is a miracle. It is the stage upon which Allah has already written some of His most magnificent signs. And now, as its people endure the cruelty of the world and cling tightly to their Lord, the next chapter of divine history is being written, one not only remembered by historians, but recorded by angels. Because this land was always part of the plan, and no matter what is done to it in the dark, the light will return. Not because of politics, not because of power, but because Allah never forgets His promises. The weight of oppression in Palestine is unlike any burden carried elsewhere in our time. It is not only the physical crush of tanks and bullets, but the silent, suffocating pressure of being watched and ignored, of crying out and hearing nothing but the hollow echo of your own voice. To live in Palestine today is to live with the knowledge that your suffering is not a secret, but a spectacle. The world sees it, knows it, and yet does nothing. This silence is not just painful, it is deafening. It is the kind of silence that feels like betrayal, that drips with the cold indifference of nations who know the truth but find convenience in denial. Children grow up beneath the shadow of warplanes instead of clouds, their lullabies interrupted by sirens, and their playgrounds replaced with checkpoints. What was once a home becomes rubble overnight, and what was once a neighborhood becomes a graveyard. Mothers no longer dream of their children's futures. They pray only that they will survive the day. Fathers no longer hope to provide prosperity. They hope to keep their families together for one more night. Grandparents remember the trees they planted, now uprooted. They remember the earth that once gave olives and figs, now scorched by bombs. There is a grief in their eyes that is older than their wrinkles, a sorrow that reaches back generations. Yet despite this devastation, the world watches with weary eyes and does little more than change the channel. Leaders offer carefully constructed statements, balanced on the tightrope of neutrality, never daring to call injustice by its name. Human rights organizations publish reports, page after page of documented crimes, violations, statistics that should shake the conscience of any reader. And yet these reports gather dust while the violations continue. The silence is not passive, it is violent in its complicity. Because in the face of oppression, neutrality is not moral, it is a mask for cowardice. But there is one who does not forget. There is one whose silence is not absence, but a deep and knowing watchfulness. Allah is not unaware of what is being done. When a mother weeps over her lifeless child, her sobs do not vanish into the air, they rise. They are carried by angels. They are written in books that will be opened on a day when justice is no longer delayed. When a father prays over the body of his son, the earth itself listens. The soil that once felt the footsteps of prophets now drinks the blood of their spiritual heirs. These are not moments lost to time. They are woven into the fabric of divine justice. The Qur'an tells us plainly, do the people think they will be left to say, we believe, and they will not be tested? This suffering is not a curse. It is a trial, a test so steep, so sharp, it could break the strongest of hearts. But in the furnace of that pain, Allah is refining the souls of those He loves. Their suffering is not evidence of divine distance. It is a sign of divine nearness, because Allah only tests those He intends to elevate. The people of Palestine are not being crushed, they are being shaped. Every demolished home becomes a palace waiting in Jannah. Every orphaned child is not lost. They are held by the most merciful. Every mother who whispers Ya Allah through her tears is wrapped in a mercy unseen by the world. But what about us? What does our silence say? Are we so desensitized that bombed schools and burning hospitals no longer stir our hearts? Are we so comfortable that the screams of another people have become background noise? The test is not only theirs, it is also ours. The suffering in Palestine is a mirror held up to the global Ummah. What we do in response reflects who we are as a people. Will we speak? Will we give? Will we stand? Or will we scroll past, satisfied with our awareness but void of action? The people of Palestine do not ask for pity. They do not seek headlines. What they seek is justice, dignity, and for the world to stop pretending not to see. They want to live, to worship, to raise their children in peace. They want what everyone else wants, the basic sanctity of life, the simple right to exist. But instead, they are forced to carry a centuries-old burden, to endure siege, imprisonment, and exile, simply because they refuse to give up their land, their faith, and their identity. There are moments in history when the silence of the world becomes the loudest sound, when a collective failure to act becomes a stain that cannot be washed away. We are living in one of those moments. We will be asked about it. We will be held accountable for what we said or didn't say, while homes crumbled and lives were shattered. Allah does not only record the pain of the oppressed, He also records the inaction of the comfortable. On the day of judgment, we will not only be asked about our prayers and our fasts, we will be asked about the people of Al-Aqsa, about the children of Gaza, about the cries that reached His throne but never reached our hearts. It is easy to condemn with words, but what is required is more. True believers feel the pain of others as their own. They speak when silence becomes betrayal. They act when passivity becomes injustice. And they never forget that Allah is watching, always. His justice may be delayed, but it is never denied. The silence of the world may roar now, but it will be silenced on the day when every soul is brought forth and every action is weighed. And when that day comes, the martyrs will rise, the oppressed will be honored, and those who were forgotten by the world will be remembered by the Lord of the worlds. Until then, the people of Palestine carry a burden that should not be theirs alone. Their wounds are real, but so is their dignity. Their scars are deep, but so is their faith. And while the world may forget them, Allah never does. Every moment of their suffering is recorded. Every prayer they whisper is heard, and every tear they shed is counted. Oppression is heavy, but the promise of Allah is heavier. Justice is not a dream, it is a decree, and it is coming. There is a promise that echoes through the ages, a divine assurance that has never been broken. It was spoken long before our time, written not by the hands of men, but revealed through the lips of prophets. It is the promise of Allah, that justice will come, that the oppressed will rise, and that no tyrant, no occupier, no force in creation can stand in its way. This is not a poetic hope or a distant dream. It is a certainty as sure as the rising of the sun and the setting of the stars. Allah has spoken, and His word is truth. His promise is not vague. It is precise. It is deliberate. It is inevitable. Throughout the Qur'an, we find verses that do more than comfort. They assure, they declare. They remind us that injustice never goes unnoticed, that no cruelty escapes the divine record, and that every cry of the oppressed ascends faster than the sound of any bomb or bullet. When Allah said of Bani Israel, and we wanted to favor those who were oppressed in the land, and to make them leaders and to make them the inheritors, it wasn't just a historical anecdote, it was a divine pattern, a blueprint, a cycle that repeats through generations. First comes the injustice, then comes the patience, and then, when the world thinks all is lost, when the darkness becomes unbearable, Allah intervenes, not quietly, not subtly, but with a force so complete, so undeniable, that the world can only stand in awe. The story of Musa and Pharaoh is not just a tale from long ago. It is a mirror of today. Pharaoh had the power, the soldiers, the wealth, the arrogance. He believed he was untouchable. He believed he could crush a people into dust and silence their cries forever. But what he did not understand is that the Lord of the oppressed was watching. And when the time came, the sea itself rose against him. The laws of nature bent, and the waters opened not for an army, but for a people who had been enslaved, beaten, and forgotten. That is divine justice. That is the promise of Allah in action. Today, the people of Palestine walk in the footsteps of those earlier believers. They too are beaten, displaced, and betrayed. The world watches, and often the world turns away. But Allah does not turn away, not for a moment. Their every sigh is counted. Their every prayer is recorded. Their hunger, their fear, their loss, it is all written. And what is written by Allah is not forgotten. He has promised to raise the oppressed, to honor their resilience, to grant them the inheritance of this blessed land. Not as property, not as a political prize, but as guardians of its sanctity. This leadership that Allah promises is not born from wealth or military strength. It is born from truth. It is born from pain endured with patience, from tears shed in sujood, from hearts that break but do not give up. These people are being shaped, not for defeat, but for elevation. Their wounds are real, but so is their reward. Their grief is deep, but so is their connection to the divine. And every injustice they endure does not weaken them. It lifts them. It places them closer to the promise, to the moment when justice will not only be served, but seen. And the tyrants, the occupiers, those who laugh while others cry, do they imagine that their power makes them safe? Do they truly believe that their weapons make them invincible? They forget that the one who created the heavens and the earth hears the cry of a hungry child in Gaza louder than the roar of any jet engine. They forget that Allah's justice does not operate on the timeline of nations. It moves with the precision of eternity. It may seem slow to us, but it is never late. When He decrees something, it is only a matter of time before the world sees what He has seen all along. This is the reality that unfolds in Palestine. Not just a story of loss, but a story of divine preparation. Every demolished home will be rebuilt in Jannah. Every martyr buried beneath the rubble is already alive with their Lord, sustained by His mercy. Every widow who cries in the night is wrapped in unseen compassion. And every orphan is not alone, for the angels of Allah hold them close. This is the unseen world, the part of the story that headlines cannot show. But it is more real than any political speech or breaking news alert. What matters now is not just what is happening, but what it means. It means that Allah is fulfilling His promise. Slowly, painfully, beautifully. And as we watch, we must ask ourselves, do we see it? Do we recognize the unfolding of something sacred, something foretold? Or are we too distracted to notice that prophecy is not just in the books of the past, but alive before our very eyes? The people of Palestine are not broken. They are chosen. They are carrying a trust so heavy that only hearts refined by faith can bear it. And we, watching from afar, have a role too, not to pity, but to witness, not to despair, but to believe, because this promise is not just for them. It is a reminder to all of us that truth cannot be buried, that justice is not a myth, and that the word of Allah is final. So let the world mock, let tyrants gloat, let the silence continue, but let none of it shake our certainty in what Allah has decreed. The day will come when the land will rejoice, when the people will walk free, not just in body, but in spirit, not just in geography, but in destiny. And on that day, the tears will turn to smiles, the rubble to gardens, the pain to paradise. Justice is not just coming, it is written, it is promised. And the one who made that promise has never failed, not once, not ever. They are not victims. Though the world may label them as such, reducing their existence to images of despair and suffering, the truth is far more profound. They are heroes, resilient, unshaken, and full of a strength that humbles even the most powerful of nations. The children who walk barefoot across broken glass and charred stone are not merely survivors of war. They are the inheritors of prophetic courage. The women who cradle Qur'ans to their chests as soldiers storm their homes are not fragile. They are fortresses of faith. The fathers who bury their sons and whisper Allahu Akbar through their tears are not broken. They are unyielding pillars, carved from the very mountain of saber, of patient endurance. The people of Palestine have been painted as helpless, as voiceless, as desperate. But those who truly see them know differently. Helplessness is not in their vocabulary. Every day they rise, every day they resist, every day they live with dignity under occupation. They are proclaiming to the world that they will not be erased. They do not merely endure, they embody strength. A strength not found in weapons or wealth, but in something deeper, something divine. It is the strength of the soul, the power of belief, the fire of conviction. In a world obsessed with physical dominance, the people of Palestine remind us that true power lies in the heart that refuses to bow except to its creator. A child who picks up a stone and stands before a tank is not a victim of war. He is a testament to courage. His act is not desperation, it is defiance. It is a message that even the smallest hands, when guided by belief, can shake the confidence of giants. A young girl who carries books to school while drones hover above is not a casualty in waiting. She is a scholar in the making, a future voice for her people, a candle burning against the dark. And a grandmother who plants herbs in the ruins of her home, whose smile still blooms despite what she's lost, is not defeated. She is a witness to resilience, a soul that carries the memories of generations and still finds the will to nurture life from ashes. This strength cannot be quantified. It does not fit in the statistics that measure casualties or damage. It does not appear in military reports or diplomatic briefings. But it is real. It is the strength that angels record. It is the strength that echoes in the heavens. It is the kind of strength that no army can destroy, because it is not built on flesh or stone, but on faith. Faith that Allah is watching. Faith that He is near. Faith that every tear, every prayer, every breath of patience is being gathered, preserved, and elevated by the one who never forgets. Sabr in Islam is not passivity. It is not surrender. It is an active force. It is standing firm when the ground beneath you collapses. It is believing when the world calls you a fool for holding on. It is smiling in the face of pain because you know who is with you. Allah says, indeed, Allah is with the patient. Not above them, not around them, but with them. That means when a mother wraps her child's body in a white shroud, Allah is with her. When a young man prays in the rubble of a mosque, knowing he may not live to pray again, Allah is with him. When a father whispers words of encouragement to his children while hiding in a basement, even as his own voice trembles, Allah is with him. And that presence is more powerful than any weapon. These are not victims. These are the saints of our time. The quiet warriors, the bearers of truth. They do not need applause or medals. Their reward is not in this world. It is in the next, where their patience will shine brighter than any crown. In the silence of night while others sleep, they raise their hands to the sky, calling not for vengeance, but for mercy. Not for power, but for peace. And in that moment, they are giants. Their whispers reach higher than any speech. Their duas are louder than any protest. Their sincerity pierces the clouds and ascends to a throne that listens with perfect justice. They are the inheritors of prophetic resilience. Just as Musa stood firm against Pharaoh, just as Maryam carried her child in silence, just as the prophet trusted Allah in the cave while surrounded by enemies, so too do the people of Palestine carry their burden with unshakable belief. And like the prophets before them, they are mocked, oppressed, and attacked. Yet they rise. They rise from funerals with heads held high. They rise from the ashes with hearts full of remembrance. They rise with stones in their hands and Qur'ans in their chests. To look upon them and see only suffering is to be blind to their nobility. They are not to be pitied, they are to be honored. Their strength is not a cry for help, it is a call to conscience. And for those of us watching from a distance, the question is not what we feel, but what we do. Will we reduce them to statistics, or will we recognize them as spiritual leaders, reminders of what it means to have unwavering faith in a world that constantly tests it? Every time they whisper the Shahada under fire, Every time they recite Qur'an while their walls shake, every time they choose to live with dignity rather than die in silence, they prove that they are not the weak. They are the chosen, they are the courageous, and their reward is coming, not just in the world to come, but in this life as well. Because Allah has promised victory to those who endure, to those who hold on, to those who trust Him, even when everything else is lost, and His promise is always true. So let no one call them victims again. Let no one reduce their story to tragedy. They are not defined by what was done to them, but by how they responded, with courage, with honor, with faith. They are the heartbeat of a sacred struggle. They are the light in a dark world. And they are heroes, not someday, not if they win, not if they survive, but now, today, in every moment they choose to believe, to rise, and to carry the trust of their ancestors with dignity. In the stillness of the night, when much of the world sleeps in comfort, there are hearts in Gaza, in Jenin, in Jerusalem, that do not rest. These hearts rise before dawn, not because they are free of burdens, but because they are full of faith. Their homes may be broken, their streets darkened by the threat of violence, but their connection to Allah is unbreakable. In the deepest hours of night, when silence blankets the earth, the people of Palestine lift their hands, not in surrender, but in prayer. They whisper verses by candlelight. They call upon their Lord from refugee camps, from ruined masjids, from overcrowded shelters. And in those whispered pleas lies a power that few can comprehend. Because the dua of the oppressed is unlike any other. It does not knock gently. It breaks through the veils of the unseen and ascends straight to the throne of the Most High. These prayers are not empty. They are soaked in sincerity, in desperation, in love, in pain, in trust. Every tear that falls during those supplications is not lost. It is caught by the angels and carried upwards. It is written, preserved, recorded. It is honored. When a mother kneels beside her child's grave and cries out to Allah, her sorrow does not vanish into the night. It echoes in the heavens. When a young boy clutching his Qur'an prays for safety as drones hum above, his voice is louder in the spiritual realm than the engines of war. When a man, broken and weary, bows in the remains of his home and whispers, Ya Rab, the earth itself listens and the sky responds. This is the miracle of dua. It does not require wealth, status, or influence. It requires a heart that believes. It requires the humility to ask and the courage to hope. In the Qur'an, Allah says, call upon me and I will respond to you. Not maybe, not later, not if, but will. That promise is certain. That guarantee is divine. And the people of Palestine know it. Even when everything else is stripped away, their homes, their schools, their safety, they still have this connection. And no occupation can sever it. No wall can block it. No army can intercept it. Their prayers move faster than any bullet, fly higher than any jet, and strike harder than any weapon. The world underestimates this strength because it is unseen. It cannot be measured by military analysts or captured by journalists. But its effects are real. The believer who cries to Allah is never truly broken. He is being lifted. She is being heard. And when enough voices rise together, when enough tears are shed in unison, something begins to shift, not only in the spiritual world, but in this one. Hearts begin to awaken. Minds begin to question. Injustices once ignored begin to weigh heavy on the souls of those who had looked away for too long. The power of sincere prayer has always been the silent engine behind great change. This is not new. History is full of moments when the cries of the oppressed changed the course of time. Musa prayed when Pharaoh tightened his grip and Allah parted the sea. Maryam prayed when she stood alone, accused and shamed, and Allah honored her above all women. The Prophet Muhammad prayed in the cave of Thar, hunted and surrounded, and Allah protected him with the most fragile of creatures, a spider and a dove. It is through prayer that the impossible becomes possible. And it is through prayer that the people of Palestine remain firm. even when their world collapses around them. In those dark rooms where no cameras reach, in those corners of refugee camps where news crews never go, the real resistance happens. A woman places her hand on her child's forehead and whispers verses of protection. A father gathers his family and leads a quiet prayer, his voice cracking with emotion. A child, too young to understand politics but old enough to memorize Qur'an, recites softly into the night, asking Allah for peace. These are the acts that shake the throne, not because Allah needs reminders, but because these moments are filled with such sincerity, such submission, that the heavens respond. Angels descend in these hours, mercy is poured down, and every soul that turns to Allah in complete dependence becomes wrapped in His protection, even if the world outside is in flames. This is a secret strength, a spiritual weapon, a shield stronger than steel. It is what has kept Palestine alive, not just in geography, but in faith, in memory, in spirit. They may not have missiles, but they have munajat. They may not have allies in every capital, but they have the attention of the King of Kings. And that is more than enough. To the world, they may appear powerless, but those who understand know that the one who kneels before Allah can stand before anything. The one who places their forehead to the ground in humility is more powerful than the one who stands tall in arrogance. The people of Palestine are not waiting for the world to save them. They are calling upon the one who holds the world in his hand, and he is never deaf to the call of the oppressed. So let us not be fooled by what we see. Let us not think that rubble and ruin mean defeat. Let us not measure success by worldly standards. The prayers of Palestine are alive, they are rising, and they are shaking the throne of the Almighty. Justice is not just written in sacred books. It is being written now, by the voices that cry in the night, by the hands that raise in sujud, by the hearts that will never stop calling upon the only one who truly responds. And when the response comes, it will not be subtle. It will be as powerful, as certain, and as undeniable as the promise itself. The cries from Palestine do not stop at its borders. They rise, they echo, and they reach every heart that still beats with faith. They are not limited by time zones or languages. They are a test to the entire Ummah, a reflection not of the suffering of one people, but of the spiritual state of the global Muslim community. These cries ask a single, piercing question: where are you? Not rhetorically, not symbolically, but truly, where are you? When children are pulled from beneath rubble, when mothers scream into the dust, when masjids are reduced to ashes, what are you doing? These cries are not just theirs, they belong to us. Their pain is our responsibility, because the Ummah is not a title. It is a bond. It is a contract of the soul, sealed by the Shahada and bound by divine accountability. In the Qur'an, Allah describes the believers as a single body. When one part aches, the entire body responds, not just in sympathy, but in action. If a limb is wounded, the heart does not say, "That's not my concern." The whole being reacts with urgency. Yet today, a vital part of this Ummah is bleeding, and too many have become numb. We scroll, we sigh, we move on. We say Subhanallah and then return to our comforts as if our concern has been fulfilled through emotion alone. But Allah asks more. He asks for sincerity, for action, for sacrifice, for standing firm when truth is difficult and costly. The people of Palestine are carrying more than just their own struggle. They are carrying the honor of the entire Ummah. They are preserving what many of us have taken for granted: the sanctity of Al-Aqsa, the first Qibla, the land of so many prophets. Their steadfastness is our shield. Their courage is our reminder. Their resistance is our wake-up call. And yet they fight, they bleed, and they die while much of the Muslim world stands paralyzed by politics, distracted by entertainment, or silenced by fear. This silence is not just disappointing, it is dangerous. Because silence in the face of oppression is not neutrality, it is complicity. Allah has commanded us to stand for justice, even if it is against ourselves, our families, our nations. The command is not conditional. It is not postponed for convenience. It is now, and it is clear. The Prophet Muhammad warned us of a time when holding on to truth would be like holding a burning coal. That time is here. It is easy to remain silent, to avoid confrontation, to stay comfortable. But comfort was never the goal of faith. Righteousness is, and righteousness demands that we do not look away. When the Prophet taught us about the responsibilities of the Ummah, he did not describe passive sympathy. He described mutual support. He described a brotherhood and sisterhood that moved with urgency when one part was under attack. Today, our Ummah is global, diverse, vast, connected in ways that generations before us could not imagine. We have platforms that reach millions in seconds. We have wealth that can build schools, hospitals, and shelters. We have influence that can pressure governments, shift public opinion, and change the course of narratives. And yet, with all this power, the question remains, are we using it? Dua is powerful, yes, but dua is not an excuse to abandon action. It is meant to fuel it. When we say, Ya Allah, help the oppressed, we must also ask, what can I do to be the answer to that prayer? The Prophet said that if you see a wrong, change it with your hand. If you cannot, then with your tongue. If not even that, then hate it in your heart, and that is the weakest form of faith. How much of our response today even qualifies as the weakest? If we scroll past suffering without even flinching, what does that say about the state of our hearts? The role of the global Ummah is not to watch from afar. It is to stand, to give, to speak, to sacrifice. This does not mean everyone must become an activist or travel to conflict zones, but it does mean we must all do something. Support humanitarian relief, raise awareness, educate yourself and others. Boycott systems that fund oppression. Use your voice in classrooms, in boardrooms, in conversations. Make Palestine part of your identity, not just your charity. Let it shape your choices. Let it interrupt your comfort. Let it pierce your heart enough that you can never again look at a peaceful sky without remembering those who haven't seen one in years. The companions of the Prophet would weep when they were unable to participate in defending the vulnerable. Not because they feared judgment from others, but because they feared standing before Allah having done nothing. They understood that faith is not just belief, it is action. It is the hand that gives, the tongue that speaks truth, the heart that refuses to be desensitized. Our Ummah is being tested, not just by what is happening in Palestine, but by how we are responding. The day will come when Allah will ask us, what did you do when the people of Al-Aqsa cried out? When the children of Gaza were orphaned? When the oppressed called upon me? Did you answer them in action, or did you scroll past and say, it's not my place? On that day, hashtags will mean nothing. Statements will mean nothing. Only sincerity will matter. Let us not wait until history judges us to realize what we should have done. Let us not allow future generations to ask why we stayed quiet while injustice screamed. The role of the global Ummah is not passive. It is vital. It is urgent. It is divine. If we cannot stand beside them in their cities, then we must stand beside them in our actions, in our dua, in our spending, in our speech, in our refusal to forget. Because when the promise of Allah unfolds, and it will unfold, we will be asked, where were you when it happened? Let us pray that our answer will not be silence. Let us pray that we will be among those who cared, who spoke, who gave, who stood, and who remembered always. Hope in Palestine is not born from political negotiations, nor is it shaped by ceasefires inked and broken on paper. It is not molded by summits or speeches or alliances that shift with the winds of diplomacy. No, the hope that lives and breathes in Palestine is not political. It is prophetic. It does not rely on world powers that claim peace while arming oppression. It does not look to parliaments or presidents or pacts that serve interests over justice. It rises from something deeper, more ancient, more eternal. It rises from the words of prophets, from the tears of messengers, from the promises of Allah Himself. This hope is not a fantasy. It is not naive. It is rooted in the soil of revelation and watered with the blood of martyrs and the patience of the oppressed. This hope lives in the hearts of those who continue to pray even as bombs fall around them. It burns in the eyes of mothers who have buried their children but still whisper, Alhamdulillah. It shines in the voices of children who recite Qur'an from the ruins of their schools. It is not weakened by the loss of homes or the collapse of buildings. It is not shaken by tanks or threatened by bullets, because it is not a hope of this world alone. It is the hope that exists when all worldly hope has been stripped away. It is the hope that says, even if the world turns its back, my Lord is still watching. Even if no one else hears me, He does. Even if I die with nothing in my hands, I die holding firm to His promise. The prophetic tradition has never been about ease or comfort. From the beginning, it has been about standing in the face of overwhelming odds and trusting not in what you see, but in what you know to be true. Musa stood before the Red Sea with Pharaoh's army behind him and his people terrified. There was no escape, no victory in sight, but he did not despair. He did not retreat. He said with unwavering certainty, "Indeed, my Lord is with me. He will guide me." And with that faith, the sea split. Not because Musa had power, but because he had trust. Not because the circumstances were favorable, but because the divine decree had already been written. Palestine carries that same spirit. It is a land that remembers, a people who hold tightly to the stories of their prophets, not as tales of the past, but as guidance for the present. The fire did not burn Ibrahim because his trust in Allah cooled it. The cave protected the prophet, peace be upon him, because his reliance on his Lord sealed it. These were not legends. They were signs. Signs that when everything around you says it is over, faith still whispers, "Not yet." The same God who saved them saves today. The same angels who descended then descend now. The same power that parted the sea still flows in the unseen, and it flows toward those who believe, who endure, who refuse to surrender their dignity no matter how much is taken from them. This is the hope that cannot be extinguished. Not by blockades, not by media silence, not by oppression that tries to erase identity, because it is the hope that lives in souls aligned with the divine. It is the hope of a father who stands at his son's grave and says, "You are with Allah now." It is the hope of a girl who draws pictures of freedom with crayons while living in a tent. It is the hope of a people who wake each day under siege and still greet each other with "Assalamu alaikum," peace, even when there is no peace. This kind of hope is not weakness. It is resistance in its purest form. It is defiance wrapped in faith. It is the refusal to let injustice rewrite the truth. The world will always misread this hope. It will call it stubbornness or delusion. It will try to interpret it through the lens of power, politics, and strategy. But the people of Palestine do not hope because they have worldly advantages. They hope because they have a covenant with the divine. They believe in a God who does not break his promises. A God who watches over every injustice and has already written the day of justice. Their hope is not passive. It moves them to act, to speak, to pray, to resist, to teach their children the names of the prophets and the stories of Revelation so that they grow up not only knowing their suffering, but understanding its meaning. In this world, hope is often portrayed as a soft thing, a fragile emotion easily broken. But the hope of Palestine is steel wrapped in supplication. It is not the hope of wishful thinking, but of divine certainty. It is not waiting for politicians to change. It is waiting for the promise of Allah to unfold. And it is not a matter of if, but when. Because every moment of pain has been seen. Every injustice has been recorded. Every prayer has been heard. And when Allah decides, no army can prevent His will. No injustice can remain when He commands justice. No oppressor can escape when He brings retribution. So this hope does not flicker in the wind, it blazes in the storm. It stands tall in the face of tanks and tyranny. It is carried in every heart that still prays, still gives, still cries for Palestine. And as long as that hope lives, Palestine lives, not just as a place on the map, but as a pulse in the Ummah, a proof that belief can survive anything, and that the promise of Allah is always near. The world may try to bury it, but truth does not die, it rises always. And with it, the people rise too. Victory is not an abstract dream floating somewhere in the distant future. It is a truth already written, a promise already sealed by the one who never fails. For the people of Palestine, victory is not something they wait for with blind hope. It is something they live for with certainty. Their story is not one of perpetual defeat, despite the pain they endure, despite the horrors they face. It is a story of divine selection. They are not an unfortunate people, caught in a web of endless suffering. They are a chosen people, carrying a sacred trust, walking the same soil and bearing the same burden that prophets once carried. Their struggle is not only political, not merely historical, but profoundly spiritual. They have been entrusted with the defense of a blessed land, with the protection of Al-Aqsa, and with the preservation of a truth the world is trying to silence. The Prophet Muhammad once said, "A group from my Ummah will continue to uphold the truth, and they will be victorious. They will not be harmed by those who abandon them or oppose them until the command of Allah comes." Many scholars believe that this hadith refers to the people of Al-Quds and its surroundings, the defenders of Al-Aqsa, the children of the Prophet's homeland. These are not just flattering interpretations. They are deeply rooted in the reality of what we witness today. For who among the Ummah is holding fast to truth more consistently, more painfully, more steadfastly than the people of Palestine? Who has endured occupation, siege, exile, and daily humiliation, yet still raises the adhan in shattered masjids, still sends their children to memorize the Qur'an beneath collapsing ceilings, still prays as bullets fly, still believes in the mercy of Allah when the world shows no mercy? They are living out the Hadith in real time. They are the faces of the prophecy, not because they chose suffering, but because Allah saw something in them that made them worthy of bearing it. They are being elevated through pain, refined through fire, strengthened by tests most of us could not imagine surviving. Every child who holds a stone is not just resisting, they are declaring that truth cannot be buried. Every woman who clutches her Qur'an while soldiers raid her home is not just protecting her faith. She is standing guard over the legacy of prophets. Every man who prays with dust in his beard and smoke in his lungs is not just worshiping, he is anchoring the heavens to the earth. Victory is already written for them, not because they have tanks or missiles or media support, but because they have Allah. Because the one who controls all things has promised that truth will prevail, that justice will return, and that the oppressed will inherit what was denied to them. Their martyrs are not lost. They are alive, sustained by their Lord. Their suffering is not in vain. It is being multiplied into reward. Their wounds are not forgotten. They are counted, measured, and healed in ways unseen. Every demolished home is a palace being prepared in Jannah. Every tear is a jewel being polished for the day when their names will be called, and the world will witness who they really are. This is not romanticism, it is revelation, it is faith, it is the very essence of tawakkul, trust in Allah when there is no reason to trust anything else. When the world offers despair, they cling to divine hope. When the world offers silence, they raise their voices in dua. When the world offers abandonment, they remind us that Allah never abandons. And this resilience is not weakness, it is proof of their status. Allah tests those He loves, and the heavier the test, the higher the rank. What greater sign of love could there be than to be chosen to guard the first Qibla, to defend the soil where prophets prayed, to suffer not because of punishment, but because of honor? Their strength humbles us, Their sacrifices shame our comforts. Their tears should awaken our numb hearts. They are not weak. They are powerful in ways this world does not understand. Because real power is not in violence, it is in faith. It is in the ability to smile through grief, to give when you have nothing, to love a land that has been turned against you, to believe in justice when all you see is oppression. They have shown us that true victory does not always look like political change. Sometimes it looks like a mother burying her child and still believing in Jannah. Sometimes it looks like a child picking up a book instead of a weapon. Sometimes it looks like a man who has lost everything kneeling on a prayer mat made of dust. And make no mistake, this is not the end. This is the middle of the story. The conclusion has already been written, and it ends with light, with freedom, with justice that rolls down like water, with a people who were forgotten by the world but remembered by the heavens, with voices that were silenced on earth but celebrated in the sky. The return is near. The honor is certain. The liberation is inevitable. Not because of global intervention, but because of divine will. Not because of negotiations, but because of revelation. Those who oppress should fear, not the retaliation of the people, but the prayers of the people. The Prophet told us to beware the dua of the oppressed, for there is no barrier between it and Allah. And when thousands, millions, cry out together, children, mothers, elders, orphans, the throne of Allah shakes. And when He decides to respond, there is no force that can stand in His way. So yes, victory is written. It is coming. It is unstoppable. Because the people of Palestine are not victims. They are chosen. They are the vanguard of truth, the inheritors of a sacred trust, the lantern bearers in a world growing darker. And soon, the world will see what the believers have always known, that those who hold firm to Allah, even with bloodied hands and broken hearts, will never be humiliated. They will be honored in this life or the next, and their legacy will echo through eternity as a shining proof that truth may be buried, but it never dies. It rises, always. When all the dust settles, when the headlines fade and the world turns its gaze elsewhere, one question will remain, etched not in the pages of history, but in the ledgers of the soul. Where were we when the promise of Allah was unfolding? This is not a question for politicians or generals. It is a question for every believer, for every conscience, for every heart that claims to beat with faith. It is not about what the world did. It is about what we did, what we said, what we gave, what we stood for, and what we remained silent about. The cries from Palestine are not just cries for help. They are a divine mirror, reflecting back to us the state of our compassion, the depth of our faith, and the truth of our priorities. Allah is watching. He is recording. Not only the tears of the oppressed, but the silence of the comfortable. Every time a masjid crumbles under fire, every time a child is buried in the ruins, every time a mother screams into the smoke, the record of that moment is written not only for those who suffer, but also for those who witnessed and turned away. We will be asked, not as observers of a tragedy, but as participants in a test. For this is not just their test, it is also ours. Will we meet that test with empty prayers and fleeting emotions, or will we meet it with sincerity, sacrifice, and unwavering loyalty to the truth? The images are harrowing. The stories are heartbreaking. But they are not there to paralyze us with sadness. They are there to awaken us, to remind us that our humanity is measured not by how we feel, but by what we do. The Prophet taught us that the Ummah is like one body. When one part is in pain, the whole body feels it. Yet too many of us have grown numb. We see the footage, we read the reports, and we return to our lives unchanged. But faith does not allow for numbness in the face of injustice. Faith demands response. It demands action, even when that action is uncomfortable. It demands truth, even when that truth is costly. We will not all carry the same weight. Some will speak, some will give, some will pray, and some will mobilize. But each of us is required to carry something. There is no room in Islam for passive witness. The people of Palestine are not just defending their homes. They are defending a sacred trust on behalf of the entire Ummah. And what are we doing in return? Are we defending them in our mosques, in our conversations, in our choices, in our daily lives? Or have we allowed the world's apathy to infect our hearts? The chains that bind the people of Palestine are not just military. They are also spiritual, emotional, psychological. And the antidote is not merely strategy, it is sincerity. The victory of Allah is near, but it does not come without trials. It does not descend upon a heedless Ummah. It arrives when the hearts of the believers awaken, when their du'as rise not only from fear, but from love, when their hands give not only from surplus, but from sacrifice, when their voices speak not only when it is safe, but when it is necessary. We are not distant from this cause. We are tied to it. The land they defend is not just symbolic. It is the first Qibla, the place where the Prophet led the other prophets in prayer, the soil where revelation descended. To disconnect from Palestine is to disconnect from our heritage, from our deen, from the bloodline of the prophets themselves. This is not an issue of politics. This is a matter of identity, of faith, of submission to the justice of Allah. And so, we are left with the question, not for the historians, not for the media, but for ourselves. When the oppressed cried out, "Where was I?" When the children wept, "Where were my tears?" When the world turned its back, did I turn with it? Or did I stand, even if only in a small way, with those who refuse to bow to tyranny? Let us not wait for the day of judgment to discover our answer. Let us answer it now, with action, with intention, with renewed purpose. Let us be among those who care when others are numb, who give when others withhold, who speak when others fall silent. Let our names be among those who remembered, among those who stood firm, among those who, when the dust clears and justice returns, can say with full hearts, "I did not turn away." And in our final moments, when the world grows quiet and only truth remains, may our deeds rise as witnesses for us, not against us. May we be counted not among the spectators of oppression, but among the defenders of dignity, because the promise of Allah is near. And when it arrives, we will all be asked, not just what we believed, but what we did.